Hey, good evening. I want to share to you about the big bad wolf. Have you ever had one of those in your neighborhood? The big bad wolf, the guy that everyone is scared of, that guy that causes trouble and steals and robs you in the hallway. You ever had one of those guys? Well, in my neighborhood, we had a few of them. Besides my brother, who was one, we had another two guys, right? The good thing is, out of the three bad wolves, I was good friends with one. I was brother to the other one, and the other one didn't like me, but he was controlled by this guy, so I was pretty safe, you know what I mean? But other friends were not safe, and they would encounter the big bad wolf sometimes in the hallways, and they would get robbed. They go into your pocket, take what you have. They would, if you were walking down my neighborhood, you would get robbed. Simple. If you were gay, forget about it. You definitely got robbed. They would take you underneath the building, take your chains, your jewelry, take your wallet, you see? So you never know when they're gonna strike because they were just always around, right? So I was lucky because, like, who wants to be attacked by the big bad wolf, right? So anyway, the big bad wolves sometimes are covered. They're not what they seem. Something happened in their life that they go from being the way they are, right? But they wasn't always like that. There was a turning point. Something happened at some point that created this new version of this big bad wolf. So I happened to be friends with this one big bad wolf, and he was pretty amazing because as bad as he was and as scared as everyone was with him, well, his little sister was my best friend, and she loved me and I loved her. We were really good friends. On top of that, he was actually really good friends with my other brother, so that made it easier. And then me and him became very close friends to the point where it could be 2 a.m. and I would get a knock on my window because I lived on the first floor. I would get this knock on my window, and here I could be anything. I could be with my girlfriend, I could be sleeping, I could have work the next day, and all of a sudden I have a knock on my window with the big bad wolf wanting to talk to me. Somebody to talk to needed to just share, right? And I would have to open the door and let him in, and he would sit down there for hours. Sometimes he would be doing some drug or some cocaine or something, and he would sit there for hours just telling me how he hated everything that he was doing, but could not stop himself from doing it. And as a friend that I am, I was always available for him. And my brother, on the other hand, I know exactly how he became the big bad wolf. It's very simple. As a child, he was actually pretty cool. He was super handsome. He definitely did have no problem with the girls. He actually had one girlfriend that at the first time ever, I was jealous of my brother because he had this one girlfriend who was actually the hottest girl in the neighborhood, and her name was Jeanette, and her last name was a C. So I don't want to say who she is but anyway, she was the hottest thing, and I was just a kid, and I was looking at her like, oh, if she can just be my girlfriend. But again, I was a kid. But my brother was so lucky to date her. And anyway, I was jealous for a minute, but what does a kid know, right? My brother was liked. He actually used to play baseball. I remember he used to play baseball in the park. He was cool. He had friends. And he, on top of that, was the best friend with my eldest brother, Pedro. Them two were very close. But one day, the turning point happened where we went from Noel to the big bad wolf that some of you guys know. It was the day my brother, Pedro, my eldest brother, was murdered. He was shot dead on the streets of Chinatown, New York, with just one bullet to his head. Being at the wrong place at the wrong time at 16 years old caused him his life. And that was the turning point for my whole family. A family of 8 who could have conquered the world. All my family was very handsome, all smart people. But that one incident tore my family apart. That one incident changed everything, changed the whole destiny and the whole future of my family. My brother, Noel, who was the closest to Pedro at the time, just took it so hard. Without the proper leadership, like a father that knew how to handle the situation, because my father closed up. My brother didn't have that mentor, that pastor, that leadership that would help him, contain the disaster that just happened. So what happened? He turned to the streets. He turned to addictions. He allowed the demons to take over his body and his mind, That's what they are. Addictions are just demons, manifestation in an addiction. Noel became all of a sudden a person that we didn't recognize. A person that was beautiful to a person that lost so much weight through his addictions, who became that guy who would rob you underneath the street corner, the staircase, became that guy that would commit crimes, and became that guy that would sell drugs, and whether it was cocaine or even worse, turned to heroin, and not only consumed the heroin, but then was a dealer of it and poisoning the streets of New York. So this one guy who had all this potential in the world, had all this beautiful, taller than me, he was so handsome, I can't even imagine what could have been if he could just, capture that what happened was obviously the worst thing that can happen, but that there is also life after. As I am sitting here today and I have life after all that happened, right? If he could just understood that, he would have been a whole different person. His life became a nightmare, consumed of drugs and, depression and misery and jail time. He's done so much jail time in and out of prison. That turning point was the worst thing that could happen to him or to anybody. Why do I share these things, Why do I share this? Because there's so many of you out there that are at turning points, or somebody that's in that place that you don't even recognize them no more. They may be a brother to you. They may be a friend, family member. I've seen mothers go through this where their children are begging that they please stop the addictions. They destroy their lives, their family lives. And some of you guys know that, but what I'm saying is that behind that person that you once knew, there was a turning point. There was a time where that person just switched to the person that they are now. It's not that they wish to be there, it's that there's an addiction that came over them. There's a depression that came over them. They are filling their pain with something else. Rather than healing, they self-destruct. My brother Noel, like I said, this is a picture from his beautiful wife. He had an amazing wife, a dear friend to me, dear friend to my family. She held this man through all his good and all his bad. She was there. What a gift that man had, that no matter how terrible things turned out, she was there. And he had good moments in his life, where he would come out of the addiction. He would then do some car detailing, and he was like that. He took your car and it made it amazing, right? There was moments that he had that were good, right? That he could, get away from it and turn away from it, but then it would always call him back. You ever get called back to that addiction, to that place of darkness where you don't want to be? You just get called back to that place. And if you look at his smile, look at that thing, right? He's a beautiful guy. And over here, it's hard to see, but what a handsome guy, what a cool guy, so much smiles. There's pictures of all of us together, He had 2 kids, he had his wife. There's a picture of my sister. And this guy here, to you, maybe he was the big bad wolf. But to me, he was my big brother who I saw cry for hours, who wrote me words of his pain. And he would say things such as, I don't know what I do. I don't know why I do what I do, but I know it's not what I want to do. I wish you could understand my words. I'm sorry, my brother, I don't understand your words because I've never been in this position, right? So remember, if you have a family member who's a big bad wolf, a friend in the neighborhood who you once knew, who was normal like you, who worked, who laughed, who danced, who was a brother to you, was a friend. If you know one of those people and they transform and change, remember that something happened and there was a turning point and a switch that transformed that person from who they were to who they are. What I ask you is that you never stop being a friend, never stop being a brother, never stop being a sister. Don't ever stop being a mother. Understand that wrapped inside that wolf, there's just a child who can't get out of his current situation. Not everyone is successful. I've watched people turn from normal to addictive to their deathbed. I watched the whole thing. I've seen it all. In my neighborhood, we have plenty of those that never came out. So if you have this experience and you currently are living through it, be merciful. As hard as it is and as painful as it is, to let go, and the television set is gone, My jewelry was stolen. It's beyond my mother's jewelry stolen, my mom's TV stolen. It sucks, but it's real. And it's a family member who's hurting you. And that hurts even more, Friends, life, right? And life happens and there's a turning point. My brother who was killed at 16 years old, amazing guy, remember going through, New York City, watching movies, like 3 movies the whole day for like $5. 3 karate movies. We used to go to the movies and we used to be there for like 6 hours, And movies, we would get out and we would practice our moves walking down the street. Me and my big brothers, we did this. And then it stopped, And my brother Noel turned to his ways and the darkness took over his life, and my other brothers also suffered the consequences. My dad went into quietness and my mom suffered who knows what a mother, only a mother knows what a mother suffers. I can't even comprehend that, right? But I ask you, if you ever came across this big bad wolf, can I ask you to forgive him? Can I ask you to understand that what happened didn't come from his heart, because that wasn't his heart. I was so lucky that before he passed away, he spent that week with me, He's a week with me before he went away. He called me and said, I want to come visit you in Florida. And I opened up the doors. We sent him a plane. He spent the whole week with my sister. They hashed out their differences. They loved on each other because they were best friends at one time. And then I also spent that time with him and he told me everything. And then a few months later, he was gone, right? So as I was saying, if you ever came across his path and he wronged you, I ask you to forgive him. And I also ask you that if you have a family member, you have a friend who's in those shoes, have some more compassion, have understanding, zoom out and look at them from a different angle. Thank God that it's not you that is in that position, right? But also learn to manage through it. I suffered many years under this type of pressure, right? But I got over it and I got through it. And at the end, I always maintained the brother. I always stayed a brother. I stayed a friend. And at the end, I always was able to do what was important, which is love, right? Anyway, guys, thank you for allowing me to share this very personal experience with my brother. He's not the big bad wolf. He was just a big guy who lost his way, With that said, I really wish you understand. I wish you well. God bless you. And thank you for listening. Stay real, guys.